Can I introduce you?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's really nice to be in person. The last time we did this, we were at La Spezia with our friend Jolie back there, speaking about anxiety and coping skills as well back then. And when when CASA spoke to the school district to get some feedback on what they thought the community needed, this was still the topic of choice: anxiety and coping skills, and how families are dealing with anxiety, because we all see it, we all feel it. If you're on social media, you feel it extra. But we all need to get through it, and I think we all, want to bring the best to our kids so that they can handle these changeable times as best as possible. So, if you're new to North Shore CASA, we welcome you. We really try and create an environment where we say, come on in, the water's fine. These aren't always easy topics, but they're topics that everybody is going to deal with or has dealt with in some way or another with their kids. And we're here. And having CASA coffees is a great way for us to connect as parents. And if everybody on Zoom could just make sure to mute themselves, appreciate it. So we will, this is a nice crowd that we have for today, and we will try and continue with this series as long as COVID and life and weather and attendance allows. I think, we usually try and do a wellness topic, and then we do something specific to substance use. So please keep an eye out. If you're not already on our mailing list, today's a great time to sign up as a member. You won't miss anything. Follow us on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, we're everywhere. And we have a really rich website, nscasa.org. It has a lot of resources, a lot of content like this, like Ellen coming to speak. We video as much as we can and make the content available to the community. So I encourage you to participate. So with that, I would like to thank Ellen Ritz for coming to speak to us today. She is the President Emeritus of NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And she has just been a great advocate and a great asset to North Shore CASA. She's done other events for us in the past, and we're really grateful to have you here today. Thank you, Ellen.
So I have many hats, so thank you. Always glad to be everywhere to be able to really impart some power, some insight, some coping skills, resilience, because all of you make a difference in your children's lives. Parents are the most important factor in a child's life. And how you maneuver through all this will make a difference of how you support and how anxious and how your children there are some things biology we can't control, but we can control the atmosphere and how we deal with stress. So let me just go over a couple of things, and I'm going to ask each of you your age of your children. I have a lot of materials. I love colors, as you see. And so the colors here, doesn't really matter what the colors are, but here's a warning signs. I ask each of you if you want to take them. Warning signs of mental health disorders. How much these things I use at tabling, whether it be at schools, at colleges, at libraries, everywhere I go. And they are just a questionnaire. And if anybody on the screen on the Zoom wants them, just either contact me or Alice, and we'll send everything as an attachment. So this is what is mental health, and they're just multiple choice. They are not really a test. It's a stimulate. How much do I know? How much do I? And here, so they give a lot of the answers in the questions a bit, because it's really, we want knowledge putting forward and changing the stigma of mental health conditions. The second one is a green. It's green. It's mental health conditions. And these talk a lot about coping, about what's, and they, again, like, is mental health condition caused by parents, character flaw and imbalance of chemistry and neurology of the brain. So that's the kind of thing where everybody knows it's a neurological, biological imbalance. I'm fascinated. I think it's great. because we change stigma by understanding, I'm a nurse, but by understanding that mental health conditions, anxiety, all of that are imbalances, and they have to do with our neurotransmitters and a lot of the biology in our brain, as well as environmental influences. At the end, I was tabling at actually CASA High School, and it says, would you rather tell a friend you were in jail or in a psychiatric hospital? Guess what you think the children said, most of them? In jail. I said, and my partner, whoever I was, doing the tabling with, says, let's put this first to show this stigma. I said, okay. So we said, look, if you are in jail, you have a mark on you forever. A psychiatric hospital is supposed to be a helpful place. And so I always ask parents, never use it as a threat. There's a place where you get care, intensive care, rather than running back and forth to doctors. It is not a pleasant concept because it's locked, but its truth is that you can come out with less triggers, hopefully, and certainly, hopefully, the correct treatment. So if you want to take this, and you can use it for yourselves and talk about it with your family, because as when I grew up, no one ever spoke about mental health or mental health conditions, right? Did you ever know anybody talk about, well, I have somebody feeling with bipolar or depression? No, it was the alcoholic, the substance user, the funny guy, right? Or the people who are just out of it and don't talk in the right reality. So you can take these. I do a cheat sheet. The purple is actually something so you don't have to take notes. This is a lot of what I'm going to say. I do want you to ask questions, because sometimes your questions bring up things about, oh yeah, I have that. How would I handle that? Or what do I think? And that's going to be really helpful. Sometimes that's the most helpful. Hopefully the concepts, changing behavior or understanding things take time, especially when you're doing something different. You are wonderful parents. Doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, that you're awful. It means that we can tweak and maybe do things a little better. I'm always about, as you notice at the last page, I think it is, the 3 Ps. What are the 3 Ps? Perseverance. I have some people from my classes here too. Perseverance, right? You all have that. Patience. Most people don't. Right? I want it. I want to see a change right now, and that doesn't happen. And understanding your patience will help so much of people move forward. And what's the most important thing? What's so important? Positivity. You want to change behavior? Notice the strengths. Catch that little ray, of, oh, you're never going to bed on time. Catch the time they do. I love that you went to bed on time. That's great. People, your kids, especially the ones who are struggling with seeming to be oppositional or, trying to figure out who they are. So they're trying to be independent. And we see that as sometimes not helpful. You want to catch when they're doing something well. When you're critical and judgmental, they have nothing to lose but to stay that way. I promise you. You want it, and even if it's a spouse behavior, find the thing that you like. I love candy. I say, well, I'd love that you brought me candy, and you want to bring me more. So it's a silly example, but it is really helpful. And so I say to my classes, as I know some people know, I say, before you say anything, think of a minute or two. Is it helpful and is it positive? If it's not, don't say it. And I really mean it, because what they found in research, and I didn't mean to go into this first, but what they found in research is that one negative, one hurtful comment will stay with somebody, and 1,000 attaboys will take to change that. And I mean, so in my groups, I have many different support groups. I have some for parents, some for people who are struggling. But as I listen, and I learn from everybody, but as I listen to the people who are struggling, is that they are really the one thing that was hurtful, they keep, and they define themselves with it. So we have choices. Everybody has a choice. We're not victims, and victims is the weakest place we could be. Remember that. You have a choice to say or not to say. You can't control anybody but yourselves, right? You got to understand that. So when we're trying to control even a 2-year-old, yes, and a 5-year-old a bit, right? But as kids are growing up, you want to create critical thinkers and resilience, self-control from within, motivation from within. And it's funny, we all do it. So there's no such word as perfect or normal, just remember that. But as we go through this and we do it, we motivate with the criticism. I said, oh my God, and we just do it. I don't know why we do it. Try not to. Try to say, you motivate with, I really love that you tried your best. I was on the school board and my daughter's career was towards the end of high school at that time. And I learned that, better late than never, right? That how you should look at the effort. Because even if kids are the best at something in their school, in their class, in athletics, doesn't matter what it is, they go into the bigger world, whether it be a college or something else. And being the best is going to, they may not get the A or be the top because it's a bigger pool. So instead of saying, I love that you got the A, say, I love that you did your best. Because doing the effort and doing the best is far more satisfying as you go through this world. And we're preparing them to be resilient, coping people going through the world. And coping is a lifetime. Remember, it's a lifetime effort for all of us. Aren't we all learning, right? Things happen. And so one of the things I have on here, I'm just going to take a break from that, is coping. Some of the things are the same as in there, some are different. And self-acceptance. I send monthly new, it's like
Can I hand these out for you, or do you want?
you can hand them out, that's fine, they're all for people. They are, and you can hand this out too if you want. Lots of things to hand out. That's why I have the bags.
That's why we have bags. I'll
So, I forgot what I was going to say, but anyway, so I sent that out monthly on my things that are happening. We have spirituality. I lead a faith net group of clergy, because if you're struggling with something, who do you turn to, right? Many times faith leaders. And we have found that faith leaders have a different amount of knowledge and comfort with struggling mental health, whatever it is, and we want to support them. I don't believe in really using negative words. As you hear, as I go through it, I try, we want to support. We don't want to make anybody feel, because everybody's doing the best they can. And so it's really important. These are warning signs. I also have, we just started a teen support group. And it's so badly needed because I have so many families coming to me who have 11, 12, 14, a lot of 15s, a lot of in high school. So so if you're interested, I need to talk with you and have a parent, but I have the flyers here in case you're interested. This doesn't mean that somebody has a diagnosis. It means that somebody's struggling. We're not going to be talking about diagnosis necessarily. We're going to be talking about topics. And how I formed this group was I took kids who were either siblings of people struggling, or they could have been struggling, but they are families that I knew. And we said, so what's important to teenagers? And these were teenagers. What are topics? I want you to come back next meeting with 3 topics each that we could discuss. And each week we'll go over a topic that will be of relevance: social media, identity, how to use, and things like that. Boundaries, limits. There's so many topics. So if you're interested, certainly contact me. But the most important influence is why I'm here is you. And I really mean it. My daughter wrote this. Proud of her. But she has given me a run for my money at times. And, I don't really, only in NAMI I speak about it, but she had her struggles. But she had a lot of insight. And I learned when she told me something that was difficult, thank you for telling me. And you never defend. You never say why you did it. You say, what can I do going forward? Or let me try again, So, and you want to keep the most important thing you can do, and I mean this, is communication. I don't care if it's good, bad, or indifferent. You want that communication, because when kids close off because you have overreacted when they told you something, or you've been critical, don't do it. You want that communication, especially as they go through the teen years. They may pull back and not tell you, but you want it there in case they really need it. One of the things my parents told me, which is really helpful: we'll love you no matter what. If you lie, you lose your reputation, and that you can't get back. So tell us anything. And when we did, they didn't react badly. Of course, they didn't like it, but and it's funny because I look back at my own childhood, and I always think of it as a rosy childhood, but as I've gotten older and I look back and I know more about all this mental health stuff, I'm thinking, oh my God, what happened in our family? But I never felt it. Terrible things can have happened. But my parents moved through gracefully. and that's why I'm an emergency room nurse. I was, I'd say, okay, this is a problem. I'm going to figure out what to do. And that's coping. And then I'm going to take care of, I'll try this. And if it doesn't work, I'll try that. That is called resilience. And if you help your children understand, okay, so try this. And if it doesn't work, try that, or what would you try? Or if something, they come to you and they say, oh my, I did this and it didn't work out. And you're going to say, man, don't do that. So what you're going to say is, okay, what could you have done differently? You're going to help educate them in critical thinking and resilience, because life is full of ups and downs. Life is never like this. We have stress, some little stresses every day, some big stresses once in a while or a lot, depending. And so how you help them deal with stress is going to change their life for the good. And I mean that. It doesn't mean that they don't have it. And remember, I want to give this to you. When kids have stress or something happens, I always say to parents, say, yay, it's a teaching time. It's a time I can support and help them figure out how to get through it. Because these are tools. I don't care how young they are. I don't care if they're, you use appropriate words when they're really young. But so what could you have done differently? Johnny hit me. What would you have done differently? Same thing. I spoke in a church in Springfield Gardens, and it was, a lot of stigma, right? So I said, any questions? Or someone said, any questions? A little 6-year-old posed her hand and said, I don't have any friends and I want friends. What should I do? I said, okay, what you should do is pick one person. And this is also for any age, by the way, but pick one person who looks a little lonely or even doesn't want to and you want to be with. Have a play date after school or outside of school on a weekend. And if that doesn't work, then you try somebody else. And it's on a one-to-one basis is where you develop relationships. And so then, the talk was over and everybody crowded around. They didn't want to say anything. So, and that's what we're trying to change in NAMI is stigma. Because, as a nurse, I always say mental health conditions, anxiety, how you deal with stress, it's all biochemical, right? And how you go through it will change the chemicals in your brain in a good way or a bad way. And so understanding that it's like diabetes, you work with diabetes, oh, I got to change my eating, I got to do insulin, I got to do whatever it is, especially type 1. And I used to teach about diabetes. So, so I have all these hats, as well as I'm a sub-school nurse now. So, which I never thought I would do, but I actually like it. So what happens is that just like you have to work on another illness, diabetes, thyroid, you need to take asthma. You have to know what might trigger it to stay away from, depending on what it is. It's just the same thing with mental health conditions. Understanding what you need to do, which you call coping, or how to, and it's not easy because mental health conditions this research is far behind because of who? Freud, Jung, all this stuff, character flaw. It's not. Look in history what they thought of people. I think a lot of the witch trials where people had psychosis or schizophrenia. There is hope for any illness, by the way. There is hope for any illness. There are treatments. And so I don't usually start there, but anyway, so anxiety and feelings during COVID and beyond. I do want to read what my daughter wrote, and I thought it was wonderful. She really helps guide me. That's after she started talking to me again. And I learned a lot. And she communicated nicely. So during this time of anxiety and challenge, there is no one way to feel. When we accept our feelings, we are more comfortable and can figure out how to best cope with them. Coping can look different at different moments. Sometimes just getting through the current moment is enough. Other times it is helpful to do something different that will help change our feelings. And remember, there is no one right way to feel right now. However you are feeling, however you are coping, you are surviving, and that is enough right now. Be gentle with yourself. And I'm going to tell you, I don't always agree with some professionals because I think anxiety, and I was brought up like this. My mother always said, think about what's upsetting you. And when you get in your belly, then you need to look at that situation, what it is. And so I truly believe to treat anxiety is really not with a pill, because a lot of the pills are, you think, okay, it's going to take care of everything, but to look how, what can I do? So the top thing on the purple thing was anxiety. What is anxiety? It's the unknown, something that I either can't control, I'm worried about, or something I don't know how the outcome is going to be. And it's the same thing. So everybody has anxiety. It's a natural, normal. If somebody didn't have anxiety, they would be risk takers and they get into trouble, right? Anxiety is a good alarm. A student says, so nervous about the test. Well, hopefully they'll think, what do I need to do? I got to study more. And then I'll feel a little bit more in control. You can't control the teacher and you can't control what's on the test a bit, but you can control studying a bit more and being as prepared as you can be, which means I'm going to take an hour out each night and study. And then you feel less anxious, and a lot of things that will help decrease anxiety is really looking at what you can control and what you can't control. If you can't control it, throw it out. There's nothing you can do with that, but see what you can control and affect. And that's really towards the top, the same thing. If I can affect or control something, I feel a little bit less of a victim, not out of control. I don't like the word victim because I don't think that we have choices, and the choices are, what can I do, right? And then if this didn't work, okay, I'll try that. That's how you learn. That's how you learn. And I know everybody comes from an original family, and how a parent or both parents dealt with things. Sometimes we don't like it, but we carry it forward, right? Oh God, I'm finding myself yelling, or I'm finding myself worried about the vacuuming, and my mom always worried about the vacuuming, things like that, and so we think about, I do, not, a little bit, what did my parents, what did my mom handle, how my father handled this, right? And it sort of guides you, probably earlier more than even later you still do, but you sort of become habits. And so really think about what you say and what you do, because as parents, now, as a mother, generally you have a little bit more influence or that relationship with a daughter. It's not that fathers don't have a relationship, but they see who they are in as you as a mother. As a father, and this is not 100%, boys really look to how the father maneuvers them through. As you are in a family, this is really important. We're two individuals. If you have a partner or married, two individuals coming into a relationship, right? And you both handle things a bit differently. And usually if you can handle them the same, but some things you handle the same, something differently. I'm going to ask you in front of your children, never to argue or disagree. You can say, okay, I'm not sure, but we'll talk about it later. Or just talk about it later. Because your arguing and disagreeing is the most frightening thing that children can go through. And I mean it. They're saying, well, they have to have reality. No, they don't have to have reality. They have to feel safe. If the beginning of their lives, which means all school age, if they don't feel safe, it creates anxiety. It creates so many problems. And they're using trauma a lot. Trauma could be many things. So trauma is sometimes a divorce, and you can't control life, but you can control your relationship with children who are going through it. You don't talk badly about the other person hopefully doesn't talk, but you can't control the other person, right? So you be who you are, and you bring that peace into that family. If you have a relationship, even if it's good, you don't get along with people, and people handle things differently. Sometimes it's good. Somebody say to my husband, this is better about that. And sometimes, I speak, so it's really helpful if you can have that working relationship. And I don't know if you remember, but I remember as a kid, I went to my father for some things, I went for other things. So, and that's helpful. That's negotiation. That's learning how to don't ever be insulted, even though my ego sometimes moves. Which you think I'm chopped liver, I don't know, but I don't say it. I'm just telling you what I think. But so understanding though, your knowledge of understanding a lot of this stuff and accepting your feelings, but not necessarily having to, and you push your feelings down, they get bigger and worse and they create problems. When you recognize them, you really get through them easier. Okay, and you have to understand other people, your partner, people in the family. I come from with a husband who, us girls, we always like to talk problems out. Men sometimes don't like to do that. So some men do, these are all generalities. It's not 100%, but some men don't. So, my husband would come home from work, especially early in the marriage, and I say, he was upset. I said, oh, what happened? What happened? He says, and I wouldn't I wouldn't like annoy him then, but then later I might ask him again. He said, look, talking about it makes me even feel worse. So I learned to zip it. And I mean it. And understanding what somebody else needs is really helpful. And it's whether it's your children or somebody else in your family or your friends, it doesn't matter. And so when you try to fight with what somebody needs, it's not going to be helpful. I do want to say something about children, because children, I'm going to tell you some of the things I believe. When you trust someone, they become trustworthy. When you say you're bad or you don't trust you, there's nothing to lose but not to be trustworthy. So, and I see the best and they will be their best. I mean, these are really important concepts. And I'm going to tell you a story about my brother-in-law. His school called, the teacher said, Jesse threw a pencil at somebody. I didn't know my brother-in-law was so down to earth, but anyway, so I heard the story and he said, when Jesse came home, Jesse, what happened? He said, I have an extra pencil. And this kid didn't have a pencil, so I tossed it to him. So my other belief, I'm going to tell you a lot of my beliefs, is that there are people who have reasons for what they do. When you ask open, easy questions without judgment and criticism, what happened? Use certain questions as a generality. And then the best thing you could do in there, and this is in psychology and everything else, listen. And what happens in families, we say, oh, here they, in our mind, not necessarily out loud, here they go again, but that's it. It's not necessarily true. As you really listen and value what the person, your children say, or anybody says, particularly in the family, in the most emotional triggered place, right? Sometimes, what you do is you give them self-confidence. What I have to say, my mom or dad listens, they hear, and then you say, so, and if it's something that you were not, as I said before, not great, say, so what could you have done differently? Or what can you do next time? That's how you create critical thinkers. How to solve problems. Because I'm going to tell you, I have all kinds of families, and I have some families who have always been overprotective. And I say to the family, and it's usually, sometimes dads, but anyway, but it could be anybody. And I say, look, what you're doing is the hidden message when you're doing not age appropriate stepping back, but overprotectiveness is you're saying, I don't trust you. You don't know it. You need me. And that's about you. That's not about the child. And so what happens is when a child has a lifetime or a school age lifetime of that, they become very insecure. And you say, oh, I don't understand. They're scared of everything. Well, if you do everything for someone, and again, age appropriate stepping back, and then you don't just step back, but you educate in a way, but not too pedantic. But my parents did, I have to tell you a cute thing. And what I learned to do, talk about people on the TV and you give your messages that way. Sometimes when you talk directly to your kids, they'll say, oh, right? But my parents, what they did was there were 3 of us children and they sat at the head of the table. And what they did was they said, they talked together. They talked about the neighbor down the block or someone. And we were like listening because we said, oh, like eavesdropping. But they taught us lessons that way. And it was really helpful, And so sometimes direct is, especially, if it's not something that's critical at the moment or something, is really a good teaching tool. There's so many things you can do. And just to remind you to have fun. To remember that relationship is also fun. Even when someone's struggling in school, struggling somewhere else, have fun. Remind them that that's part of them, but they have so many other parts of them. And I mean that. One of the things in school, when I see kids, they come into my office and say, this is the happy nurse. But I'm very structured. I always say, look, if I see a little 1-year, I have all different ages. I go to different schools. I'm like, swinging their legs. No swinging legs. And as soon as they stop, I said, that's great. I'd love to see that quiet. And they like that because not only do I give them direction, but I catch when they're doing it. And so then a little boy came, I think it was St. Mary's actually, came in with another first grader and he sat quietly and the other first grader had to learn not to. So, but he was a big shot. So it was really, it's so exciting to see that. My belief is also that when kids are not doing well in school, there is something distracting them, and it's more emotional. And so I believe everybody is intelligent, and I believe that people can do their best when they don't have this distraction. But there are labels, and even though I'm in the psych field, I don't like labels. And in psychiatry, how diagnoses are made, and even in ADD, ADHD, it's symptomatic. There aren't tests except for PET scans, which we don't do because they're expensive and they're not always. But so I say, let's work with the symptoms. What's bothering you today, or how do you feel, when this happens, and it's really a learning education. So the most important part of children growing up, or people growing up, is recognizing when my mind starts racing, am I anxious, if you're bipolar, am I going into a mania, something like that. So you give them the tools. What do I need to do when that happens? The insight and recognition, rather than defending, somebody's being critical and thinking I'm a bad person because my behavior is not great because I am struggling with something. And getting to the core of that will help your child go beyond that. And so giving them tools whenever that happens, well, what do you think you can do? Asking the question, let the brain think, is the best tool. When you tell, people don't learn as much. It's a teaching tool for teachers too. When you ask, what do you think you could do? Or, and so they say, well, I don't know. So, say, okay. And so sometimes when you ask the question, they don't know at the time. It's okay, so think about it, because the answer they may give you at the moment may be very different after they think about it. And so never, again, please don't overreact. Just say, okay, or think about it if you have something. Or like I say I'm just going to give you some examples that may not be as relevant here, but somebody who forgets to take their medication. So I say, okay, so what do you think could be helpful in reminding you to take medication? And this is at home, not in the nursing office. But they say, I don't know. So then I would come up with a list. Pill box, putting that in the bathroom or the breakfast table, then, eating table, or having a sign in the mirror or at the door. You tell me. So when someone tells you what's going to be helpful, the buy-in is greater than you telling them. Remember, pull it out or give them a choice. Because people don't have all the answers, but when you give them a choice, my daughter at the age of 18 months was very particular what she wanted to wear. So my mother comes over and I say, who cares what she wears, except if it's something special, right? So I say, do you want to wear this or that? No, says, why are you asking? I said, I want to fight. I said, choices make her feel powerful, or at least have a choice. Remember that. If you have somebody, and another my belief is ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, every child, and if you have more than one, is born with a different sensitivity, different personalities mostly, right? And so genetics are funny. Like I look at my brother and sister, where'd they come from? but so I laugh about it, but we all are very different. And some of us, I mean, you're young, and so, but if you brought up with, treat everybody the same, but you can't always. So if a child, if I put three children in the same family in the same room, and something happens, and including the parents, right? You all come out with a different story or a different observation. And that's just the way we are, because we take things that are meaningful to us or that affect us or whatever it is, how you see it. So never say, I'm asking you really, never say, oh, these two don't give me trouble, but this one is a tough. Don't ever say that. So each one needs something different. And if they have a need, you need to meet it. When you fight a need, it gets bigger. My sister, but anyway, so she was always a complainer. I don't want to say hypochondriac, but when we were growing up, my father was a doctor. And she said, absolutely, whatever she said, and he would say, and I learned from watching it, even I know what I was watching, but he said, okay, let me see your throat, let me feel your glands, let me take your temp, whatever it was, right? Appropriately. So as he met that need, not suddenly, over years, I think, she became less like that. So when trust, when a child is telling you, and if they're acting out about something, try to find out what it is that they're uncomfortable about. Sometimes, and I had somebody call me up about a 3-year-old, and she said, my son is such a good child, but suddenly he's biting and hitting. I said, I want you to test him. He's frustrated. He doesn't know how to express it. And most kids don't know how to express what's going on, even teenagers. Um, so I said, get him tested. Maybe he's having processing, maybe it's here, who knows? But you need to figure out why he's frustrated. Do you understand? So things that people, behaviors say a lot. See beyond them. Don't look at the behaviors per se. Say, what is it saying? And if somebody is starting to be frustrated and angry or whatever however they're acting out, say, the most highly coping resilient thing you could do is say, you seem very frustrated, you seem angry, what's going on? What is going on? Or what is this about? Open, easy questions, and then zip it and listen. And I mean that. It's really important. Some of the things that we spoke about on my paper, which I don't have, I don't remember what I wrote, but I think routines. Routines during COVID, we're talking about anxiety, whether during COVID or not. She has some extra, okay. Okay, so some of the things that I have put on here are routines. Routines make people feel safe. Knowing what to expect. What's the opposite of anxiety? What's an anxiety? Not knowing, right? And some people need more routines and some people, will maneuver through no matter what. So you're gonna have kids who go through this time easily, right? Well, I wouldn't say easily, no one goes through it easily, but goes through it and survives well. Other kids feel like I'm so traumatized, I can't see my friends. Your job is to redirect, or what can we do? Or have other activities. Some things that you can't control, figure out what you can do to help them either connect. One of the things that parents don't do, and they should do, is set fair, reasonable limits. And that means take away that cell phone, take away the cell phone, not turn it off, an hour or two, and it's your choice. I never tell families they have to do anything, an hour or two before bed, because that brain does not shut down. And they will sneak, if they can't sleep, they'll go look at the cell phone. You want them to try to self-soothe. And that's the problem with babies. You need to not constantly pick up the baby every time. I mean, I pick it up and make it feel secure, but at night, where I had trouble with my daughter, they need to learn to self-soothe, that I'm here, you don't sit, I'll sit next to the crib or whatever it is. So those are kinds of things that are really important. And kids are so overact, they have so many activities these days. And so I'm asking people to try to have, whether it be a Saturday morning or even on a weekend, a half a day, a couple of hours, that they just sit and they do something by themselves. Find something, and I hope not the video all the time or the cell phone, but something that they can be creative, that kind of stuff. If you can carve out that, if it's not every weekend, it could be once in a while, but it's really important. Family, during the time when COVID was really, we weren't anywhere, now we're open more. I said family should have family time, every, whenever you can. Once a month more, yes. And it really have memories. Have a special, what I do, I have a special name for my daughter, or a special saying. My sister says, love you to the moon and back. And I have FAA, forever, always, and always. I have a little guy sitting on the fence since I was a little girl, and I put that on all her cards. So if you have special things for each child, not the same, for each child, something different. If you have more than one, try to think of that. Something cute, something that will connect you. Have traditions. Those are very helpful. It's sort of like, it's not like heavy with traditions, but things that you do specially, food, Sunday night we have dinner together or whatever that is. It's up to you. It's in your lifestyle and what's meaningful to you. And that's really important. Let's see. So what you model, that's really important. And I know Amy and Rob know that very much. What you model, children will learn. So if you have something that happens that's stressful, don't do it. You can do it outside. You can do it outside, but don't do it in front of them. Say, okay, we'll figure this out. I know I feel awful. So recognize your feelings. I feel awful. I'm stressed. You can even say if you want, but I'm going to figure out what I can do about this. That's resilience and critical thinking. The other thing is, let's see. So that modeling is going to be really helpful. Recognizing, acknowledging your feelings. We are not perfect. Matter of fact, we don't even have all the answers to everything, right? I certainly don't. But but admit it. How wonderful. I'm not sure, but you tell me what you need. And that they're going to tell you what they need. And you'll figure out if you can meet that or not, And so, and then we can talk about it, but always trying to pull out from the person, because what you're doing is creating confidence and value. What do you want? What do you need? And that doesn't mean that you're going to meet all of them. And my mother always said, when you have to say no, give a reason, even when they're 1 and 2 years old, that kind of thing. Because when you do, and as kids get, I was going to ask you how old your kids are. I'm going to just stop in a minute and do that. But when you do that from very young, and anytime you have to say no, you have a reason. When there's an emergency and you have to say no without having time for a reason, they will trust you. Remember that. Don't have control issues, please, because it's not healthy. Please, if you do, you can stop that. And I mean that. So you mind everybody sharing how old your kids are, or kid, or no kids, doesn't matter. You want to start? Yay! Oh, so teachers, this is really good for teachers because the same techniques help teachers or nurses or anybody. So thank you. My daughter's out of school. So thank you. Yes.
13-year-old.
13-year-old. Oh, what an age. Boy or girl?
Yes, boy.
Okay.
I have an almost 15-year-old son. I have a 9-year-old son.
All good ages. Just different challenges of different ages. Yes.
I have a 17-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son.
Great. Thank you.
7 and 9-year-old.
Great.
I have a twin, almost 13-year-old.
So the 24-year-old, the brain is getting much more mature. And I'm going to tell you, I just want to stop for a second and just put this in here, that the brain matures up until the age close to 30. They say 25. If anybody has a 30-year-old, you see, it doesn't roll their eyes. They have grown up a bit. They have that adult, I'm able to talk to them without them going, So you do, if you're aware of it, you notice, but the frontal lobe is the last to mature. And so when you see people who have poor impulse control, because that's part of the age of the brain not maturing, or that they don't have concepts about consequences, it's not necessarily your fault, but they don't really recognize that. The brain, the organizational part, the anxiety part, all of that is the frontal lobe and much more. And so understand that sometimes this is the nature of the person, with that frontal lobe not yet maturing. And so, my belief is the more knowledge you have, the more you're comfortable with what's going on. And I think that everybody, really could use a lot of support so that let's see, who didn't talk? You?
I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 2.5-year-old.
Ooh, good. I always say sons younger are much more energetic, but later the girls with the hormones a little harder. Right. Thank you. I know drops. Okay, same with you, both a couple. Yes. And last but not least, what did he say? What was that? Right.
19, 16, 13 boys.
Okay, so all of the things that I am saying are going to be relevant even to the 2.5-year-old. Things that you institute early. One of the things you don't recognize, the relationship really is up until about teenagers. You have done everything you need to do, your ethics, your morals, everything else. Doesn't mean you stop, but it means that you've given all of the lessons and that communication up until somewhere in the teenage years. Because then they're sort of like, their job there is to find out who they are, to have relationships, to figure out what they want. So they listen to you. Don't think they don't listen to you. You could be in the next room on the phone. And so, I used to go into school to talk about bullying. And so, it's really do as I do as well. And so when you say, that's not nice, and then you go and you go yell at somebody on the phone, they learn. And a lot of the bullying that I went into schools talking to kids about were things that even could be from a brother. I had a second grader, I went into school, a second grade, and the second grader said, I have 2 younger brothers, but I'm always blamed and I'm punished. I said, so what did you do? He said, I go into the bathroom to get away so they don't instigate. He didn't say instigate or whatever he said. And He said, but my mother still blames me. Well, happily, the mother was coming in the next day to the second grade teacher. And he was going to talk to her. So be careful. Don't take somebody as a blamer. There's a lot of stuff goes on between kids that you don't know. And it doesn't mean that you get angry. You say, okay, I'm going to have consequences for both of you. I never talk about punishment.